This will not be the first time that unionized teachers has used kids as human shields to pursue an agenda. And you will see most teachers, and this is very sad and dare I say very disingenuous, we're doing it for the students. Bull.
So the teachers of UTLA are out here today and they're striking. They're striking for higher pay, smaller class sizes, physicians, nurses, librarians, and counselors in all schools. And I'm out here asking them just what that means. Let's go. Are you willing to do an interview? No. You want to do an interview about the strike? Sorry. No, he said no. Hi, do you want to do an interview? No. Are you willing to do an interview about the strike?
Not at all.
Mr. Burton here is the union rep of Hamilton High School. Are you willing to do an interview about the strike? Mr. Burton. Are you willing to do an interview?
No!
Are you down to do an interview about this strike?
No thanks.
I'm on the UTLA Board of Directors. I'm a teacher here at Hamilton High School. I was also a student here at Hamilton High School. Yeah, so for me, this is about fighting for the future of public education.
We're here with you were the union president of 1989, correct?
Right.
And what are you out here supporting today, specifically?
I'm just supporting UTLA and their fight to improve public schools in California and Los Angeles, and to put a damper on the charter school movement.
The unions don't want kids to be able to leave the regular public schools for charter schools because charter schools typically are not unionized. And so you have kids moving and money moving from the unionized regular schools to the non-unionized charter schools. Well, the unions are opposed to that. What does that have to do with what's good for kids? The union is opposed to it for other reasons.
It's
because
not.
they want the money and they want the kids. See, and this is the way it works. And again, it's not because these are bad people. It's because there are fundamental interests involved. And they have an interest in seeing to it that there aren't charter schools.
We are standing for our teachers, we're standing for smaller class sizes, we're standing for nurses and counselors, services in our school. We don't have librarians in our school.
We have students with special needs, students who are falling through the cracks, English language learners. This is a fight for them.
How is this for them specifically if we completely interrupt instruction?
Indeed, this is a short-term sacrifice for a long-term gain.
What I do know is that it's going to disrupt instruction for students.
The delay with the loss of education and the loss of curriculum and learning every day is going to be really detrimental. It's not just equivalent to one day, but also you have to look at relationships internally within the schools.
My daughter graduated from Crenshaw High School. I was an active parent. I was not an inactive parent. I was a parent who was at the school almost 24/7. What I see today and what I wrote about was from the heart, and it was from the heart because I feel that it is greed. When you talk about continuously making money and getting increase on the backs of our babies, and particularly African American, because that's what I can speak on. I have not stood in the shoes of any other race. I've not walked in the white race. I've not walked in the Latino race, but I have walked for 50 or more, 60 years as a black woman raising a black child in a public school system. And in that time, and what I see now is pretty much is that our children, when you look at statistically, when you look at those numbers, you look at lower standard, lower student achievement in the black community.
Using graphs presented in 2017 by the previous LAUSD superintendent, Michelle King, from the Office of Data and Accountability, I found that only 30% of all LAUSD students met or exceeded standards in math. When broken up by ethnicity, 19% of African Americans and 24% of Latinos met or exceeded standards, compared with 57% of whites and 70% of Asians meeting or exceeding math standards. When it came to English language arts, only 40% of all LAUSD students met or exceeded standards. When broken up by ethnicity, 30% of African Americans and 34% of Latinos met or exceeded standards, compared with 66% of whites and 73% of Asians meeting or exceeding English language arts standards.
That's a problem for me to say just give the teachers more money based on the fact that my children, my community is basically lacking.
I think it hurts everybody, but especially low-income students, and particularly black and brown students.
Well, first of all, it has to hurt African American students based on the fact that they were already hurting before the strike. Now, what does that say?
This will not be the first time that unionized teachers has used kids as human shields to pursue an agenda. And you will see most teachers, and this is very sad and dare I say very disingenuous, we're doing it for the students. Bull.
Right now we're sitting on a $1.98 billion surplus. This is money that needs to go to our students for lower class sizes, counselors, therapists, nurses, librarians, restorative justice. We believe in a public education system that's fully resourced and fully funded.
How will this be achieved?
Well, we're hoping that Buettner comes to the table, and we are hoping that he gives them the funds needed to make all of this happen.
I believe the money can be allocated to the school board.
I wanted to find out LAUSD's financial situation, so I made a few calls. Hey, Andrew?
Hi, this is Andrew. Gabby?
This is Gavi, indeed.
Govern for California is a political organization that is focused on better governance and fiscal responsibility in the state. So, Los Angeles Unified has very high levels of unfunded liabilities that are primarily comprised of two things: unfunded pension liabilities and unfunded retiree health care liabilities. In the case of retiree health care, they're using a system called pay-as-you-go, where they don't pre-fund at all the benefits.
Essentially, they signed all these contracts saying, we're going to give you these benefits. We don't necessarily have the money, but we'll figure it out in the future.
Yes, yes, exactly.
Say your name and what you do.
Nick Melvoin, and I'm the Vice President of the LA Unified Board of Education.
How is LAUSD doing financially?
Not well. LA Unified has a $500 million annual deficit, which means that we are spending about $500 million more per year than we're taking in. We also have a $15 billion unfunded liability for our employee health care, which means that independent of our kind of annual operating budget, we are on the hook for $15 billion over the next few decades to support our teachers. Now, we spend over $1 billion a year. We spend $1.1 billion a year on employee and retiree health care. But that's just kind of what they call pay-as-you-go. We pay it every year. We have not invested properly so that our retirees can feel comfortable that when they retire, the money will be there. That's really unfair.
The responsible way to do something like provide someone a retirement benefit is, if I say I'm going to provide you health care while you're retired, every year you work, I should be putting aside some money in an account that's for your health care or for your retirement benefits each year you work. So that when you retire, you have the money you're looking for. And instead of doing that, LAUSD has just been paying as they go. So over time, the ratio of retired teachers to current teachers has been growing.
There's both less money for salaries and hiring teachers today.
According to the U.S. Census Bureau, from 2001 to 2016, LAUSD raised its total current spending by 55.5%, raised its salaries and wages by 24.4%, but its employee benefits went up 138%.
What the district has done to respond to them is to limit eligibility. They used to allow anyone to retire with 5 years of service, and they could collect these benefits for life.
Wait, what do you mean?
Slowly.
You mean that they could be working for 5 years, retire? Wait, they would have to reach retiring age, right?
Yeah, so they would have to, well, as long as they had logged 5 years with the district, and then they reached retirement age, they could collect benefits for life.
Holy moly.
Yeah, so the district because of their cost pressures, has essentially limited how many teachers will ever qualify for these benefits. And so fewer and fewer of the new generation of teachers will qualify for this benefit, even as they're paying for it through lower salaries along the way.
Let me just tell you a little bit about healthcare, a personal story. When I go to a doctor, I pay $5. I pay a $5 copay. That's it. They can do blood tests, take all sorts of tests, EKGs, etc. All that costs me is $5. And that's going to cost me that for the rest of my life unless there's a change to the system. Not only that, my wife, who's also getting up there in years as I am, she gets the same deal, $5.
So you get these benefits because of your participation in the union?
Because of the deal that the unions, all the unions in the state, the public employee unions, have made. And this is the reason, probably the main reason, why the money is not going into the classroom where UTLA wants it. So UTLA wants it both ways. They're not giving an inch on health care, and they want money for the classroom, and you can't have it both ways.
So you believe as a retired employee that you don't deserve these benefits?
I don't, and if I could vote to raise my copay and pay for some of my insurance, that would be fine. I would have no problem with that. I don't deserve it. I mean, I don't cry myself to sleep over it, but I really, and none of these teachers really deserve those kinds of benefits. And the classes could be made smaller if we narrow down the healthcare costs.
They have a $1.9 billion reserve. That's a lot of money.
What about this $2 billion reserve?
So they're not wrong in that we've built up somewhat of a savings, but the irony of what you're probably hearing from the union is two things. One, the reason we built up that savings is so that we could put money aside for the things the teachers are asking for. So when I got on the board about a year and a half ago, we were already in negotiations with the teachers union, and we knew we wanted to give them a raise. And I asked, how are we going to pay for it? And the district had never figured out how they were going to pay for it. So what they did every year or every few years is they would offer raises, and then they'd have to cut other programs. So what we did is we took some money aside and we said, let's protect this so that it can go to the raises, the 6% raise. Let's put some money aside so that it can go to reduce class sizes.
And right now, the district has the opportunity to put that money in the classroom.
People are saying spend the reserve. We are spending it. We're spending every dollar on our kids. The issue is that we're not spending it tomorrow. We're spending it over the course of the next few years.
So you couldn't meet these demands immediately, is what you're saying?
We cannot meet these demands immediately. And actually, just last week, we got a letter from the LA County Office of Education, which oversees our school district. And they said, you are spending way more money than you're taking in. It's very irresponsible for you to suspend this reserve. We're going to appoint a fiscal advisor who's going to sit in on your meetings, kind of like a babysitter, to make sure you don't continue to do this.
So what I'm aware of is that from hearing from the union, they say that the demand should be met and that there actually is no fiscal decline. There is no financial issues in LAUSD.
Are you aware of the fiscal state LAUSD is in currently?
Well, they have a close to a $2 billion budget surplus, and there is no there's no money problem in LA.
There's no money problem in LAUSD? No, so LAUSD is lying?
Yeah, absolutely. They were lying in '89 when we struck and got the money, and they're lying again today.
UTLA seems to agree with their previous president. In an article they posted on December 10th, 2018, they state that the problem of the district going broke does not exist, that it is a coordinated stunt between LAUSD and the LA County Office of Education. The only evidence of this conspiracy in which the district controls the county is in this December 10th article, and this article does not have the author included. The union also does not address specifically how the county is lying about their numbers. They don't have any independent analysis of the district's finances to prove that there is no chance of going broke. In a 2019 article from Union President Alex Capito-Pearl, published by the union, he slams the district for lies about the budget, but doesn't provide the specifics into how they are lying. The funny thing is that if you go to the same UTLA website, go to the section where it says campaign/issues and click on issues, click on charter school accountability and scroll down, you will see a header titled Economic Impact Report, where the union actually does provide a fiscal report of LAUSD from this organization called the costofcharterschools.org. But this report admits to a fiscal crisis. This page on the UTLA website not only admits to a fiscal crisis, but also to a risk of going broke. And in a 2016 UTLA article titled Standing for Racial Justice by President Alex Shapiro-Pearl, he writes that indeed the district is in financial crisis. He uses the same report referenced earlier from the costofcharterschools.org to back up the claim. So Alex and the union appear to blame this fiscal crisis on charter schools, but at the same time, the union is saying that this fiscal crisis does not exist. Even though if this fiscal crisis was coming from charter schools, they would still be on that because there's been no real decrease in charter school growth since 2016. The union seems to contradict itself on its own website.
LA County Office of Education is coming in and saying that
all in it together.
It's all a big coordinated stunt.
Absolutely.
Are you aware of this from the union?
I am, and I have to say, it's relatively crazy. On the district side, supporting this claim of insolvency is the district's financial advisors, the county, the state. The state superintendent of public instruction sent a designee down here a few months ago to say the same thing. We have independent financial review panels going back, almost 10 years, a bunch of different superintendents. We have independent onlookers like Professor Pedro Noguera at UCLA. We do have to agree on one set of facts, and the fact is, as validated by all these independent experts, we are on the verge of insolvency.
And why are we in this situation right now?
So it's a combination of things. One is over the last 40, 50 years, we've seen this systemic underfunding and disinvestment at the state level.
According to the Cato Institute's analysis of the state's education budget over the past 40 years, per-student spending has roughly doubled. Californians are spending $27 billion more today on K-12 education than they did in 1974, and that's controlling for both enrollment growth and inflation. So why is it that Nick Melvoin, the vice president of LA Unified Board of Education, why is he telling me that there's been underfunding at the state level for 40 years? Why is it that Austin Buettner, the superintendent of LA Unified Schools, why is he saying that there's been underfunding at the state level for 40 years?
And it's, again, in this context where the state has really failed to invest in our kids, and also the other things that the district now has to pay for, like health care for employees, are all, in some part, the result of other governmental agencies not investing in the future. If we had a single-payer or universal health care, we wouldn't have to pay for health care.
Only if universal health care was implemented, it would cost about $400 billion a year in California. That's more than twice our annual operating budget right now. So maybe the district won't be having to pay those healthcare bills, but any taxpayer in California will feel the burden.
The fact is that it's the state that underfunds our school. And I think if you listen to the union messaging, you'll hear a lot of different conflated messages. LA Unified is hiding money, but California is the 5th largest economy in the world and underfunds our schools.
California has the 5th largest economy in the world, and we're the richest country in the world, and yet we're starving our public schools.
This is a wealthy state, the 5th largest economy in the world. It is shameful that we rank 43rd among the states in per pupil funding.
And so they're kind of muddying, who is actually the culprit. I agree with them. The state needs to better fund our schools. They need to give us more money so that we can support our kids.
I wanted to find out the politics of teacher unions and collective bargaining, so I reached out to a few people.
My name is Terry Moe. I'm a professor of political science at Stanford and also a senior fellow at the Hoover Institution.
Okay, and you said that you've been doing years of studying on unions and collective bargaining. First, let's establish what collective bargaining is.
Collective bargaining is the process by which unions negotiate with employers for employee contracts. Typically what will happen is a group of workers will elect a union for the purpose of collective bargaining, and that union will negotiate a contract on behalf of those employees and can negotiate these contracts that apply to all of the workers, right? So that each worker doesn't individually have to negotiate his or her contract with the employer.
Big picture, what can you tell me so far?
It's understandable why teachers would want to join unions. They want their jobs protected. They want more money. They want more benefits. They want their jobs to be secure. They want good working conditions. But the thing is that that's what unions are about. They're about jobs. So union power gets used in the interests of teacher jobs. And sometimes, often, things are done in collective bargaining and also in politics that are not good for kids. because unions aren't in the business of representing kids. They're in the business of promoting the job interests of teachers.
The main theory that would predict the negative effect is what's often called the rent-seeking model of union behavior. So under that model, teachers unionize, they collectively bargain, and often they're negotiating not only for higher pay, but also better work environment, right, in terms of fewer hours, less likelihood of getting dismissed, right, stronger tenure protection. And so teachers become both more expensive and are more protected. Teachers are earning more, but they're not expected to do more. It's not related to their output, to their productivity. And in fact, it could be even the reverse, that you're paying them more and they're so much more protected that they can actually reduce how much they work.
You'd think that the district would represent the students, but in fact, the problem is that the members of the school board are elected, and they're elected in elections in which the unions are very powerful players. Overall, they're the most powerful players in the politics of education, and so you get school board members then who are in many cases beholden to the unions, and they're the ones that are supposed to be representing students. But, there's a rhetoric to these things, and there's the reality of it. The rhetoric of it is that the union will always say that they're doing what they're doing for the benefit of students. And the district will say the same thing. They're all doing it for the students.
What are you guys doing here today?
We are here to support our teachers.
And what do you mean by that?
We mean to give them rights to less kids in classrooms, more nurses in schools, and all that good stuff, We stand for teachers!
You can't expect students to really understand all this, right? And I think it's really sad that the players in this, and it's usually the unions, will try to enlist the students to be on their side, and it's very successful because students like their teachers. It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
And they should like their teachers. I think that teachers like students and students like teachers, and that's very normal. But the fact of the matter is that collective bargaining and the politics of education are not what they seem, right? And this is really all about power, and the students get used often by the unions to support their demands, whether or not those demands actually are good for the effective organization of schools.
Let me tell you a little bit about how teachers are paid in teacher union systems. Okay. Basically, the teachers elect a union, and then they have to pay dues to the union. And then what that union does is it collectively bargains for all the teachers, because the teachers don't argue anything about their contract individually. So they tell the district, we want these kind of benefits for all the teachers and this pay raise for all the teachers. It has seniority provisions. So if you work for 2 years, you get tenure. So it's virtually impossible to fire you. If you work for even more years, you get more job security.
I would disagree. I think it's absurd that teachers can get 10 years after 2 years.
So the rule is that if the teacher's been working for 10 years or more, they can go up to 5 years without an evaluation. But the system is not based in any way on the productivity of the teacher. The second they become a teacher in this public school system, they're guaranteed all these benefits, and they're guaranteed that when there's a salary raise, every teacher gets a raise. So do you have some bad teachers?
Yeah.
So those teachers get the same exact raise as the good teachers. Do you think that every teacher deserves a raise?
No, because there's some bad teachers.
No, not all teachers deserve a raise because they don't treat it like they care about the job. They just treat it like it's whatever. So it's really no point because you're not putting in the work to get a raise. You're just doing the bare minimum.
Yeah, that's definitely whack. I mean, raises definitely should be performance-based or evaluation-based.
You said teachers who worked over 10 years can go 5 years without evaluation. They should just do it like how they regularly do it with the regular teachers who work less than 10 years.
Do you think that teachers are inherently, because they are teachers and because they have taught for a certain amount of years, that they should be required to be guaranteed benefits until they die? Just because they've worked a lot of years?
Absolutely not. I think that the longer you work, I definitely don't think your benefits should scale just based on how long you work. 100%, I think that's flawed, yeah.
So what are your thoughts on this system?
I feel like it's very unfair because a lot of our teachers don't take what they do seriously. They just fall back on the job because, if anything, they can just teach. And the outcome of it is not better, because then they're going to treat the work like whatever, and that's going to rub off on the students, which is going to make us treat school like it's whatever. So I feel like the more passionate a teacher is about the what they do, then the more passionate we will become about the work, because we feel like we can connect to you on a more human level, as opposed to, oh, we're just going to do the homework and we're just going to get this grade and that's it. That's no motivation at all.
And we're just caught in the middle.
Right, we're just stuck. We can't do nothing about it because we're students.